All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping headfirst into a deep literary analysis of what is easily one of the most pivotal moments in recent fantasy literature. We are talking about chapter 157 of Shattered Wings. Now, for those of you studying the mechanics of tense political drama and shifting power dynamics, let me tell you, this chapter is an absolute masterclass. What we're looking at here is a classic locked room scenario where the fate of rival powers is being decided, not out on some bloody battlefield, but entirely in the shadows. The author brilliantly uses this one secret gathering to expose the cracking foundations of a really dark alliance. So if you're trying to understand how to write or even just analyze political subterfuge, you are absolutely in the right place. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be moving through 5 key areas: strategy over open warfare, conscience versus ambition, the debate on redemption, uncovering the conspiracy, and finally, Belial and weaponized silence. To really get the most out of this analysis, I want you to apply a simple 3-step framework. You can basically consider this your ultimate guide to identifying conspiracy themes in political fantasy. Step 1, we identify the factions in the room. Step 2, we analyze the specific subterfuge tactic they're trying to employ. And step 3, which honestly is often the most important step in any political thriller, we observe the silent players. So just keep these steps in the back of your mind as we go through the text together. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Strategy over Open Warfare, the Pivot to Subterfuge. The chapter opens by dropping us right into the middle of a highly clandestine meeting. And the attendees? We've got Valac, a contingent of lower-ranking demons, and a number of fallen angels. Right away, the author is signaling to us that this is a mixed faction gathering. These groups have come together in secret to discuss the growing conflict. But what makes this so fascinating isn't just who is in the room, it's the radical direction the conversation takes. The primary motivation for this whole gathering is a massive tactical pivot. The source text explicitly states that their conversations revolve entirely around spreading mistrust between rival powers, rather than actually engaging in open warfare. It's a stark contrast, right? Instead of charging into battle with broadswords and armor, they're weaponizing paranoia. They want to make their enemies destroy each other from the inside out. It turns out even bloodthirsty demons have to sit through strategy meetings. It's this incredibly calculated psychological approach to the growing conflict that tells us these factions aren't just brutes, they are playing a much longer and, frankly, a far more insidious game. Moving right along to Section 2, Conscience versus Personal Ambition, the ideological divide. Because, of course, a secret meeting is never really that simple, is it? The text reveals that not everyone is totally on board with this idea of just spreading mistrust, which brings us to a massive ideological divide right there in the room. Arguments start erupting all across the room, and they center around some very profound themes. When we map out these differing moral stances, it becomes super clear how these individual motives are fracturing what should be a unified conspiracy. The text specifically highlights that arguments erupt over 2 main things: conscience and ambition. On one hand, you have the concept of personal ambition. You can imagine certain lower-ranking demons seeing this subterfuge as their golden ticket to climb the ranks, right? They're prioritizing their own rise to power above everything else. But on the other hand, we have the concept of conscience and collective loyalty. The fact that entities like demons and fallen angels are in a room arguing over conscience is such a brilliant narrative subversion. It shows us that they are genuinely struggling with the moral weight of their tactics. The collective loyalty of the group is literally cracking under the pressure of these conflicting motives. Which brings us to Section 3, the debate on redemption, differing motives. Let's see how all this tension builds into the third
and perhaps most surprising major theme of the chapter. So, the really crucial takeaway here is that these factions are absolutely not monoliths. The author explicitly notes that the gathering shows how, even among demons and fallen angels, there are deeply differing motives, specifically citing arguments over redemption. I mean, think about the literary weight of that word. Redemption implies a desire to be saved, or at least some level of regret for past actions. This deeply conflicting motive drives a massive wedge right through the heart of Valac's conspiracy. I mean, how on earth can a group effectively spread mistrust among their enemies when they can't even agree on whether they want to be redeemed or if they just want to lean fully into their darker ambitions? This internal friction is exactly what elevates the chapter from just a simple plot point into a really rich, character-driven political drama. All right, Section 4, Uncovering the Conspiracy, The Investigators. While the conspirators are busy tearing each other apart over ideology, the narrative brilliantly introduces some external pressure. Enter Ilian Mar and Vassago. The text tells us that while all these intense internal arguments are going down, Eileen Marr and Vassago actually begin uncovering signs of the conspiracy. And this is just a classic thriller mechanism. Just as the conspirators are finalizing their big tactical pivot to spreading mistrust, the structural integrity of their secret starts failing. The signs are all there. The highly unusual mixing of fallen angels and lower-ranking demons, the whispers of their tactical shift, the ideological fallout we just talked about. By having Eileen Marr and Vassago begin to piece this all together simultaneously, the author creates this incredibly tense ticking clock. It proves that no matter how clever Valac's plan to avoid open warfare might be, the conspiracy is already leaking. The outside world is closing in fast. And that brings us to Section 5, Belial and Weaponized Silence, Passive Power Dynamics. We have arrived at the absolute core of this locked room drama. As the arguments rage on and the external threat looms ever closer, we have to look at the most dangerous figure in the room. We need to talk about strategic silence. You see, in literature, and especially in political fantasy, silence is rarely just an absence of noise. It is a calculated mechanism of power. It's a deliberate choice where a character's inaction intentionally dictates the flow of events around them. In a room literally full of demons and angels screaming over personal ambition and redemption, the one who doesn't speak is the one who holds all the gravity. And this brilliantly illustrates our point. The text states, and I quote, "Belial remains silent, allowing events to unfold according to the choices of others." It is such a chilling and masterful display of passive power dynamics. By choosing not to intervene in the arguments over conscience or this new strategy of spreading mistrust, Belial becomes the ultimate observer. He isn't leading the charge at all. He is just letting Valac, the demons, and the fallen angels completely exhaust themselves. He's forcing them to make the definitive choices, which means they take on all the risk and all the blame while he remains utterly untouchable. So ask yourself this: how exactly does silence dictate the choices of others? Well, by offering no guidance, no agreement, and absolutely no opposition, Belial creates a vacuum. And human, or in this case demonic, nature absolutely abhors a vacuum. The other characters start projecting their own fears and ambitions onto his silence. They argue louder, they commit more deeply to their differing motives, and they do it all trying to win the unspoken approval of the silent power in the room. Belial's inaction is a profound, incredibly calculated display of ultimate control. Which brings us to our ultimate cliffhanger today. The stage is perfectly set. We have this insidious strategy of mistrust, a leaking conspiracy, and the terrifying silent influence of Belial watching the whole thing play out. So what's going to happen? Will personal ambition, or perhaps a sudden crisis of conscience, ultimately break this fragile alliance? The structural damage is already done. Now we just have to read on to see which piece falls first. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and remember, keep looking for those hidden dynamics in everything you read.